Okay. Well, we'll make a start, and I'm sure Councillor Preston can join us if he sees the link. Okay. Well, can I welcome members and officers to the annual meeting of the authority, and hope that we have a constructive meeting. The first item on the agenda is apologies. I understand Councillor Roscoe has submitted apologies, and Councillor Laura Robertson-Davies could be late. She's at another meeting. Has there been any other apologies, Paula?
There hasn't yet, Chair, but some are encountering sort of technical difficulties, so I will admit them as we go along. Okay, thank you. Item 2 is the minutes of the 20th of November. Can we agree those, approve those minutes? Is there any matters arising that any members would like to raise?
No.
No, and agreed?
All agreed.
Right. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest from members? No.
None received, Chair.
Okay. Item 4, questions from members.
None received, Chair.
Okay. Item 5, questions from members of the public.
None received, Chair.
Okay. Item 6, motions. Have there been any motions from members? No.
None received, Chair.
Okay, that takes us on to item 7, which is the timetable of meetings.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is the annual report for the authority to set the AGM and a timetable of meetings. The proposed date is the 25th of June 2021 to set the AGM, and there's a list of proposed 5 meetings at 4.4 of the report. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Paula. Have members got any questions? This is just the usual standard procedure, really. You know, we have the AGM after the local elections, which I've seen on the news this morning that they are going to take place on the 6th of May this year. So this is the standard procedure, really. Has anybody got any questions in relation to the timetable? No? Well, can we agree the recommendations? Is that agreed?
Agreed, yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Well, that takes us on to our biggest item, which is the authority budget for 21-22. Obviously, I'm going to ask Peter to come in now and take us through the budget. And obviously, if members got any questions, we'll take them now. So, Peter, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. I won't run you through page by page. I think that might take a lot of time. I'll give you a brief overview, and I will hope that everybody's been able to read the papers, and if they've got any questions, we can try and address them. As everyone can imagine, this year, the budget and all associated financial things are all about COVID. And due to changes in working patterns and people working from home more, due to people doing a lot more home shopping, in the current year, we expect waste arisings to increase significantly. They have done, and by the end of the year, we expect that the waste delivered to us by district councils will increase hugely, so that waste delivered by council will be 12% more than in a normal year for residual deliveries and 14% more for recycled deliveries. So it's a huge increase. And the cost of that's likely to lead to a £4.7 million increase in the cost of dealing with waste in the current year. In addition to that, we've also had the COVID impact on HWRCs. Members will recall that they were shut for a little while, and then when they've reopened in a what's called a COVID safe way, which means, and members will be aware of this, that there's a managed throughput through the HWRC, so there's fewer people and fewer vehicles in the HWRCs. To enable us to do that, we've had to also work with the highways authorities at each council to put traffic management arrangements in place so that the queues that build up on the road are managed and maintained properly. And the estimated cost of that to the year end is going to be something like £1.7 million, which was unforeseen before COVID. The combined additional costs of those measures mean that all other things being equal, we would end the year with £76,000 left in our general fund, which isn't a lot given our turnover of over £80 million. And one of the impacts of that increased cost and the lack of any reserves left would be that, again, all other things being equal, we had a levy proposal for a minimum of a 6.5% increase, which is quite a large increase. And obviously, when we had this increased proposal, we took it to district council treasurers, your treasurers, to see what their views were. And naturally, they had some reservations about an increase of that size, as you can imagine. And so they asked us whether or not we get any COVID one-off funding from government. And unfortunately, the answer to that question is that despite a number of requests to government, we do not get any COVID one-off funding at all. So the treasurers then asked if they could propose making some contributions to our one-off costs through their own COVID funds. And after some discussion, the councils have offered to support the authorities' one-off COVID costs. So, for example, the 1.7 million highways management costs for 2021, they're offering to support that. They're offering to support 50% of the additional cost of waste tonnages, because we believe that some of that is one-off, but some of it will be continuing. So that's another 2.3 million in the current year. And then they've offered to support highways management into next year, because we believe that highways management will continue because HWRC COVID safe measures will continue into next year. So taken together with the proposed use of our own reserves over 2 years of over £5 million, that's allowed us to make a levy proposal in these budget papers for 2021-22 for an increase that's limited to 0.11%, as near to zero as we can get it, in other words. And we have discussed this with both treasurers and chief executives at the councils, and we've received confirmation from either treasurers or district councils at each of the councils that this is an acceptable approach for them for this year. So that's been a positive outcome so far, and that's why we make this proposal to our members, because we believe it's the most sensible way forward. I would put one slight caveat on this. Whilst this is a good approach for the current budget round for 2021-22, we do have some concerns that these increased waste levels will continue into the year after, and we're not certain that there'll be as much one-off COVID funding around for the year after. So there's a risk that in the year after the levy will go to over 5% increase. Obviously, we will work with treasurers and district councils through the year to try and mitigate the impacts of that as soon as we know what it's looking like. But that's the risk in the future year. But for the current year, the proposal remains at 0.011%. And it's all about the amount of waste we're getting delivered to us, which has risen hugely. Elsewhere in the budget paper, we're proposing a capital programme for 21-22 totalling £1.2 million. The key element of that for members is that we are proposing putting in a fire suppression system at the Bidston site, all over the site, because it's the only one that doesn't have a decent fire suppression system in place, and partly because we had a small fire last year. It's led us to review this with the contractor. The fire suppression system will cost up to £750,000, but we have currently got an offer from the contractor of meeting us with some of the costs up to a cap of £300,000. So it's getting a decent fire suppression system for up to £450,000, which is a good investment. We've also included estimates for continuing to improve access to HWRCs, possible infrastructure changes if we need to make some of them, and then an amount of £200,000 for climate action and carbon reduction measures. And I think that's probably sufficient for me from that part of for members to take that forward.
Thank you, Peter. I've got Steph Nelson who'd like to ask a question.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Good report. I just wonder, because Alton are not part of the levy scheme, have the extra charges been flagged up to officers in the council for Halton this year?
Yeah, Steph, the officers of the council are very, very aware of what their costs are in the current year. We are in discussion with them regularly. We have had a discussion with them about one of the contracts in the current year to ask them to pay 3/4 of the bill up front and for the remainder to be paid after the year end on a full reconciliation. So officers of Halton Council are well aware of where we are in the current year and where we're going in the next year.
Thanks, Peter.
Have members got any other questions or comments they'd like to make? I can't see anybody's hand up at the moment. No, Councillor Williams.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just a quick question for Peter. I don't know whether he'd be able to answer that. The fire suppression system at Bidston, have we got any timescale on that?
We are in the middle of putting together the tender specification for that. So the tender specification will go out after this budget meeting. I mean, we're waiting for the budget meeting to say yes or no to it, to be honest with you. And after the budget meeting has said yes or no, then the tender specification will be finished. That tender will take at least 60 days to come in, and then presumably the winning bid will have to be mobilised. So we're looking at probably sometime over the summer when it would actually be built.
Cheers. Thank you.
Steph, do you want to ask another question?
No, just to make a comment, Chair. I just, from Holland's point of view, and I know the same is applied across Merseyside as well, and I'm sure the committee will actually support what I say, is that the staff have done a wonderful job, especially on the sites, because they're directly dealing with the public. What a fantastic job through the COVID they've done. I'd just like to say that.
Okay, thanks, Steph. I mean, all of us, I think, on the authority will support that. I think it's been a tremendous effort by staff at all the locations. I think, and our staff who actually work for the authority, I think they've done a wonderful job in taking us through this and continue to do so. I mean, because it doesn't seem to me that there's going to be any end in sight anyway. And even when we do get back to normal, whatever that is, you're going to have a lot more people working from home, I think more on a permanent basis. And I think, as you read in the report, it generates more and more waste. And it also affects our ability, through the resource recovery contract, to take in third-party waste, doesn't it? Because if we're sending more waste, it limits the opportunity for us to make, more funds for the authorities and for the district. So it is difficult going forward. And we've responded to that. The authority has. I mean, obviously, we've introduced the agile working policy in recognition, of what's going to be normal going forward. And I think that will be replicated, in many, many workplaces. I think, there'll be more and more people working from home. Hopefully we'll be building more houses as well. So all that will generate more waste. And obviously we need to concentrate on, recycling more and, the circular economy, so that nothing is wasted. I think that's the message that we put out constantly. So I think it's been, a difficult year, but I think, what we're doing in the Waste Authority is something that we can be proud of. And I'd just like to thank all the members and the officers for all the hard work. Has anybody got any more questions or comments they'd like to make at this stage? I can't see anybody's hand up or no. Okay, well, could I move that the recommendation be approved without reading it all out, but basically approve the revised budget and approve the revenue budget? Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. The next item is the Treasury Management Prudential Indicators. Is that Peter again?
Thank you, Chair. Members, I appreciate your perseverance in reading any of this report. It's a very short report with a very long appendix. It's probably not quite as interesting as the budget report. The key part of the report is in the appendix, and it's one of those that we are required to prepare for members, but also it's one of those that we should prepare for members because The report is intended to give members assurance about borrowing levels and the fact that the authority's finances and treasury management are managed effectively, so that you take as little risk as you can and ensure that the authority's managing within its means, as it were. So the key elements of the appendix set out the borrowing levels, which are about 41 million at the moment, borrowing requirements, and it suggests that we're currently under-borrowed, to use a technical term, and I'll describe a little bit about what that might mean in a moment. It sets out prospects for interest rates, which if you read the current day's financial press, we're actually looking to go negative interest rates, which would be a first for the country. It sets out something called the annual revenue provision, or minimum revenue provision, and the way we calculate that, which is important because we need to set aside money to pay off the borrowing over time. It sets out the treasury management and prudential indicators, which also taken together set out for members that our levels of borrowing are prudent and are sustainable, hopefully giving assurance to members. With the borrowing at sustainable levels and the sort of headline under borrowing, we may be in a position to start looking over the next couple of years at the resource recovery contract and whether or not there is any prospect for looking at that, as we're now going to be into the 6th and 7th year of that, to whether or not there's any prospect for refinancing that. We don't know whether there is a prospect of that giving us any gain at the moment. We will have a look at that. We will be required to do that with the contractor because it's a shared gain mechanism. So we'll talk to the contractor about whether their view is that there's any gain for both sides in refinancing. At the time we took the contract out, interest rates were 3 or 4% higher than they are now. So it may be that the prospect of refinancing is something that we would be able to get into. I think one of the reasons I'm cautious about refinancing, though, for members is that refinancing often involves extending the length of the life of the contract. And in a strategic sense, we have to also work with members to decide whether or not we want to extend the life of a contract where we are sending significant amounts of waste to an energy from waste facility, when strategically we might want to be doing something different over the next 5 to 10 years. But that's a matter that's broader than just the finances and will involve all the members of the authority, I assume. The last part of the appendix covers what's called the capital strategy, which links the corporate plan to the use of assets and the financing of the use of assets, and hopefully gives members assurance that the way we use our assets and the way we finance the use of our assets actually enables us to demonstrate that we do meet the terms of the corporate plan as best we're able to through that strategy. And that really is all I want to take you through on the Treasury Management report, if that's okay.
Has got any questions or comments? No, I can't see any hands up or anyone indicating. No. Well, therefore, could I move that we approve the recommendation to agree to Treasury Management strategy? Is that agreed?
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed, Chair.
I think that brings us to the end of the meeting, doesn't it? I think. Well, it's been pretty short, but I mean, I think, obviously with the budget, I think that was something that we'd all welcome. I mean, there's been times in the past where it's been quite sort of quite contentious, but I think this year, it is kept to the lowest possible levy. But obviously, we've got problems going forward, so I'll close the meeting. Then I wish you all a rest of a nice day and a really nice weekend, hopefully. So
stay safe, everybody.
Thank you for attending.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Tony.
Thanks. Bye now.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.